believe it's lying and changing your story. Well, let's bring in our special guest to help us through all this. Joining us in Orlando, Florida tonight, jury consultant, human behavior expert, Susan Constantine, back with us for hour two. All right, Susan, this isn't a case where we're talking about someone who is a psychopathic murderer, cold-blooded killer. That's not what we're talking about here. So in those cases when the story changes, you know, I immediately go to one place as to why that story is changing. So what's your take here on what could be going on here with Alec Baldwin? Not a dumb guy, but I mean, major facts here. Like, who handed you the gun that killed Helena Hutchins? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's pretty simple for me, because what's happening is that the original interview that he had was the best and the most organic, and it was as he was thinking about it and recalling it in real time, okay? So then now, as he moves forward, you see this more exaggerated, very dramatic, almost like screenplay kind of thing. He's acting. And it's now going into bolstering and slightly fabricating the facts. He was better off when he stood to the first initial one, because when he's starting to move off from that first interview and start to change and shift, use different language and diverting attention away from him, then that's going to raise all those red flags. So when you see this changing like that, is that he is trying to fit his narrative, and he's changing it throughout to tell a story, his story from the defense point of view. The problem is he's panicking. And the fact that he's panicking, he's now not remembering how he did everything happen in chronological order. And he's starting to add to it. This very same thing happened when I was working on the Michael Jackson case, and I was analyzing James Safechuck and James Safechuck and Rob Robinson. And when I analyzed them and watched all those videos, the same thing happened. There was a first initial story, and they began changing and bolstering and adding more and fabricating and make it bigger and bigger and more sensationalized, that everything that we analyzed, our conclusion was, same thing with Alec Baldwin, is it lost credibility because they fabricated and bolstered the statement. So the point being here, Vinny, I think he was telling the truth from the very beginning. All of his gestures were on point. And there was nothing that alarmed me that he was being deceptive. He's becoming more disbelieved because he's now starting to go into this little acting mode, and he's very cleverly using his language. But when you analyze all those together and compare and contrast them, he's in serious trouble because he's changing his story too many times, and he's not going to look credible, and that could be a real problem with this jury.
Well, let's talk about the credibility issue, right? Ultimately, it'll come down to the jury and what they think of Alec Baldwin. He may very well get on the witness stand and tell his story again. So what do you think the jury will want to hear? Well, obviously they want to hear the truth, but what will make them believe Alec Baldwin inside the courtroom if you have inconsistent stories outside about who handed him the gun and exactly what was happening and what the victim was doing at the moment that she was shot and killed?
Well, I think that that's the reason why he's calling some of these A-listers, because he can't do it on his own. So he needs other people to vouch for him as a credibility witness. But it's going to be a real problem. But what's going to happen, I believe, that when the jury, when they're listening to all of this, they are going to be going back to, okay, I've heard a story so many times. What does the evidence tell me? So they may disassociate with him as being the celebrity he is and just look at the facts and the forensic evidence of this case to be able to convict him or to acquit him. Well,
let me ask you about that, because some of the evidence will likely come from Dave Halls, who's cooperated and taken that deal in the case. Right from the beginning, he said, I did it, I'm criminally responsible, but he didn't get any jail time with that. Will jurors believe the people that were there, or do you think they're going to want, well, they're not going to get a video of it because there is no video of this. The cameras were not rolling. Do you think they want to hear from the people, or do you think they want something else to try to figure out the truth here? speaking about the forensics and things like that.
I do, and Vinny, we know this. I mean, every time we're looking at these trials, they look at one thing. Does a person look believable? Do I believe them? Do I trust them? Do they show the right amount of empathy and compassion to the victim, for the victim? And then the other thing is that they want to see something to put the nail in the coffin so they can be released from the anxiety that they have to be able to render a guilty verdict if they need to. So they have to change their perception, or even hearing the facts, they have a certain perception, those jurors do. But what we find is it doesn't really go off too far off from their perception when it comes to verdict, because they're going to massage their perception to meet their, the facts and the evidence to relieve themselves from feeling the guilt if they convict them. It's really interesting how jurors think when you look at the dynamics of a jury pool. But here's this, you don't have just one juror, you've got multiple jurors. So when you've got them back in there and you've got the group think going, the group tank or the deliberations, they're going to rely on different expertise of each one of them to pull out specific things that are important. And I believe that collaboratively together, they'll come to the right verdict. Overall, I think he's going to make a great impression because that's Alec Baldwin. He knows how to woo people, and he's very likable. He's very approachable. He's a great storyteller. And then you bring in the A-listers. I think they're going to be mesmerized.
We shall see. Susan Constantine, great to have you here tonight. It is something, when you meet those A-list celebrities, there's just a different aura they have about them. Thanks so much, Susan. All right, so here's the question tonight. When we bring in our think tank on this story,